I don't know why.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Marina Nani, and I have the privilege of being invited by our host today, who is going to talk to us about something so amazing that you will still be wondering for days to come. Over to you.
Hello, it's just so wonderful to be part of this great show. Thank you to Marina for inviting me on. I'm hoping to spend a very productive 20 minutes, half an hour with you, just to share with you my message about the miracle molecule. Now, we're not going to get all of this, so I'm hoping that this is going to be a series of radio shows, and I'd like you to be able to interact with me as well. So please make sure that you listen up for how you can get in touch with me and how you can have a conversation with me, or how you can even work with me.
So Jill, please mention how our audience could connect with you.
Okay, let's do that first. That's a really good idea. So I have a website, which is www.thelifestyleleader.co.uk. And you can also find me on Facebook, Gill Barham, or the Renaissance Woman UK. I'm on Twitter at Gill Barham as well. And you can also, well, you can find me on pretty much any platforms, to be honest with you. So I also have an email address, which is gillbarham15@gmail.com. But if you go onto my website, then all of the contact details are there. So I hope that's okay. Okay, so shall we get going?
Yes, please. I can't wait.
Now, I'd like just... I can't wait. Okay, so I think one of the things that I'd like to talk to you first about is how, very recently we've had some very prominent people losing their lives, sadly, to things like cancer, but particularly to heart disease. And I'm sure that you have experienced that around the world too. So you will know people, or know people that have lost their lives, particularly to the biggest killer in the world, which is heart disease. And this is my passion. This is my passions, my reason for life, my purpose in life is that I'm part of a team, and I'm building a team to save 1 million lives a year. And I'm really serious about that. So I thought what I might do is give you a little bit of background as to why I've come to this point in my life. Like a lot of people that work in the well-being or the heart-centered business, we normally come from a place where we've had challenges ourselves. And I'm not going to be trite and tell you about my journey, because I think that's an overused phrase. But I think it's important that maybe you have a little bit of background to know why I do what I do and why I'm so passionate about what I do. So if you were with me in November 2012, you would be sitting in a waiting room in a doctor's surgery. And you would be smelling the kind of antiseptic smell that's very familiar, listening to people answering the phones, and, really thinking, well, what's going to happen? And over the tannoy, a voice came, "Gill Barham, would you come to room 5, please?" And as I walked down the corridor, I was met by a little lady in a blue nurse's uniform with glasses, and she always wears them around her neck. She's got a chain link around her neck, and she was holding her glasses. "Hello, Gill, and how are you?" "Well, Dawn, actually, I'm not feeling very well." Now, Dawn invited me in, and I've known Dawn for 25 years. And she's nursed me through all of my 3 children that I had, various operations that I might have had, all my family, all the inoculations. I'm sure you know somebody that's in your doctor's surgery that you have a connection with. But I had a bit more of a connection with Dawn, you see, because I attained a registered nurse degree in the 1980s. So we always had a little bit more in common than perhaps most. And on that day, I was actually at a well woman's check, and I found myself with high blood pressure, I was 2.5 stone overweight. And Dawn was very concerned about me because she identified that I was really suffering with stress and depression, and that my body was chucking up all sorts of weird symptoms like infections, and that actually she suspected that this was a very stressful time that I'd had fairly recently. Now, I don't know about you, but if you have a job, generally people lose their job because of the people they work with, not because of the job themselves. I know. And I was in that situation. I'd been working for a national governing body of sport for 5 years, and I was pretty good at what I did, but I didn't really resonate with the people that I was working with, and particularly with my manager at the time. And this led me to suffer quite severe periods of stress. And when you're a very positive person, that's quite a surprise. And sometimes you don't really notice what's going on until you get down into a very low situation. Have you ever had that? Or
Well,
sometimes something happens to you and it's only when... Go on, Manny.
yes.
Go on,
So,
Marina.
well, I was thinking, Jill, that our listeners perhaps they understand what is happening in other people's life because it's presented to them, and it's always good to be outside to have clarity on what's happening in somebody else's life. But when it comes to yourself, it's very, very hard to identify the causes, so you deal with the symptoms.
Yes.
So illness is not worthwhile, no matter where you are in your life, no matter how much you get paid in your job, no matter what. Illness is not worth your while. So it's always a question of what's happening, what's next. It's always
Yes.
a question of is this worth my while? Is this something I really want to be part of, this degrading process where I don't know, I have no control of what I want to do, what I love? And it's that type of experience that I'm sure our listeners experience at least once in their life. Some of them were really lucky to come out at the right time, but some of them, majority of people, will tend to hang on in there just in case it's their fault. And it's never your fault. It's never your fault. But what you are at fault with is not identifying the cause of what causes you stress, depression, and how that escalates in your life. And is no like is no tomorrow, where life, as you said, is so precious. Every single moment is a treasure, and that's all we have right now in this moment in time. That's all we have, and I so enjoy being with you here, Jill, and learning from you. And this is what is going to create tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's going to help so many people in our audience to identify what are the causes of their stress, how to stop before it's too late. Over to you, Jill.
Because I think we underestimate stress, because stress can be perceived or unperceived. So, you know, I work now with a lot of people, and I ask them if they're stressed, and they say no. But actually, if you examine their lifestyle, examine the amount of time that they spend in the car or at their desk or away from their family, they don't see that as stress, but actually it's stressful for the body. Stress also comes in the form of over-exercising. That stresses the body. Stress comes in the form of over-toxifying the body in terms of what you put in terms of you know, bad water supply or herbicides and pesticides through your food. And I was ignoring all of these things, and my body was slowly beginning to shut down. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, you know, this moment was the wake-up call for me, because when Dawn said to me, I think we need to get you to see the doctor because I think there's some things that we need to do for you in order to help you, it made me wake up. Because you see, when I was 28, and I was actually 28 weeks pregnant with my first daughter, my mother died very suddenly of a pulmonary embolus, which is a blood clot in the lung. So my mother never knew my children, sadly. I brought up all my children with my husband on my own. And at that moment in that doctor's surgery, all I could hear when Dawn was telling me about what I was suffering with, they were all exactly the same things that my mother had suffered with and that I'd seen her go through over the years before when I lived with her in city. So you can imagine this big light bulb that went off in my head, can't you? So I decided that I needed to do something about it. So I actually looked at myself over that weekend. I examined what was nourishing me and what was good about my life. And I looked at the things that were stressing me, the things that were affecting my health, just as you say, Marina. And it was the job, it was the job. And I'd stayed in it because I thought this was the right thing to do. It was the responsible thing to do for my family and for my husband. But I had to make a decision, and that's what I did that weekend. And I resigned from my job, which is quite a brave thing to do. And I sat with a mentor of mine, my own Pilates teacher, who was beginning to help me with my health because she could see that I was going down in this downward spiral. As you said, Marina, I couldn't see it from within, but people could see it happening from the outside. So that was the moment that my life changed. And I began then to look at health from a holistic perspective. I'd been within the National Health Service, and I knew that it was all about symptomatic relief, about treating disease. And what I've done over the last 7 years is actually look at the natural health solutions, which is the other NHS, as I call it, natural health solutions, where actually prevention is better than cure, where food is your medicine, where you can actually take proactive activities, where you can create good habits every day so that you can live the life that you want. Because actually, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. Would you agree, Marina?
Wow, Gill, I don't think it's anything more powerful than what you just said. And when I first dealt with stress, I had no idea what stress is. I did not know what stress is about. I just felt very tired all the time, and I was working long hours. And of course, I loved what I was doing, and I still love it. But I did not realize that I'm not invincible. I thought that if I can deliver forever. So sometimes putting the brakes, just to think about what is the overdose of it that is basically destroying the balance in your life, and identifying how you could deal with that, even if it's out of your passion, out of your or other demands made on you, crashing down on you. No matter what, extreme effort, extreme invested in extreme activities. I'm not talking about sport activities, but being obsessed with work, being so conscious that you have to deliver great results, and being under so much pressure is never going to work for you. Over to you, Gill.
No. Well, it's really interesting because one of the things that happened that is probably very important to say for a lot of your listeners is too, if anybody know anybody with children, part of being a mum is that it's a wonderful job to have, and it is a job, but actually that comes with its own stresses as well. And what happened to me in that November of the year was an accumulation of things. It's a bit like in your car, if you've been in a car or you've got your own car and you've got flashing lights on your dashboard, your flashing light comes on your dashboard. It would be madness, wouldn't it, to ignore that flashing light? You would pull off and you would either, fulfill the flashing light. So you would either fill it up with petrol or put water in it or pump the tire up, or you take it into the garage to get it serviced, or for there to be a diagnostic on it. And this is what happens with our bodies, is that we have these flashing lights, and all our flashing lights are different. So your flashing light might be a headache, or it might be that you get aches and pains, or that you're fatigued, as you say, or that you suffer with stress, or that you have gut issues, or in IBS, for example, but, you know, or your hair falls out, or whatever it is, or your skin. Now that's your flashing light. And if you ignore that flashing light, what happens then is a knock-on effect, and there'll be another flashing light. So then what happens then is maybe you're not sleeping well, or maybe you're struggling to keep your weight under control. And then there'll be another flashing light if you ignore that one, and then you'll get an infection, like a chronic disease. And this is where the chronic diseases of the 21st century are coming from. Things like autoimmune disorders like fibromyalgia, ME, those kinds of things are because the flashing lights have been there, but they've been ignored. And that becomes an accumulative a result in the body, when the body just goes, actually, do you know what? I can't deal with this anymore. And that's what happened to me, because in the June of that year, if you were with me, I'd had a very traumatic time with my son, Matthew. He was 20 at the time. And if you're a mum and you've got more than one child, you may relate to this, because on this particular day, it was a Thursday, my husband was away in France walking with his brother, and I needed to be in two places at once. I had a daughter that I needed to take to a university interview, and my son was at home, and he was really, really poorly. He'd been ill since he came back from university. He was a boy that got repeated tonsillitis, and he suffered with psoriasis, eczema, all sorts of things that he'd had ever since he was a baby. And over the 3 weeks, we'd been in and out of doctor's surgeries, in and out of the hospital, in and out of drop-in centres. And my son increasingly was becoming more ill. He'd stopped eating, he'd stopped drinking. He was beginning not to be able to talk to me because his throat was swelling and he was finding it difficult to breathe. And on this particular day, I remember I couldn't talk to him. I was just texting him. Thank goodness for mobile phones, that's what I say. And he said, Mum, I actually can't take the painkillers anymore. I can't swallow them. And I rushed home from the university that we were at, and I took him straight to the hospital again. The GP that I was working with was brilliant. She phoned ahead and said, you know, you really must sort this out, this boy. Now, it was a further 24 hours before they diagnosed my son with something called epiglottitis or supraglottitis. And that's an inflammation of the little flap that sits above the windpipe. Now, if this swells, then it cuts off the air supply. Dead boy. Dead boy. And I knew that I was within hours, if not minutes, of that happening to my son as I drove him into hospital that day, and I could hear his laboured breathing. Now, they took so long to diagnose that for my son, because normally it's seen in very young people or the very elderly, because they're very fragile. But my son was 15 stone. He looks a bit like Superman. He plays rugby. He's a student. And nobody was looking for this, except I kept asking, my son was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome when he was 11. Do you think this could have anything to do with this illness? And nobody was listening, because all they were looking at was this part, the throat. And when this happened to me in the November, shortly afterwards, I went along to my first natural health talk. And on that particular evening, there was a naturopath talking about the influence of natural remedies on such conditions as irritable bowel syndrome, and how actually the root of illness was really in your gut and within your cardiovascular system. Your heart and your gut were the two main things that if they were weak, would actually bring down your health, and particularly your immune system. So I went up to her afterwards and I told her about my son. And I said, do you think this is why, you know, he was diagnosed with this? And of course, I knew the answer, really. I'd always known it in my heart that this was why my son kept getting ill. And eventually the warning signs, the flashing lights became so big that we couldn't ignore them. And from that moment on, my journey with Natural Health Solutions started, because we put a protocol together for my son. Within 6 weeks, he was a different boy. And then I started to work on my own health. I changed my life around completely. And it's so powerful that I've now gone on to help hundreds of people in the same way, so that they too can choose a life of health rather than relying on curing a disease or a symptom when it gets to that point. Over to you, Marina.
Wow, Gill, this is definitely something that everybody needs to know. You created not a solution, you created another chance for life. And I know dealing with illness and diseases is not something most people feel comfortable with. They will rush to a doctor. Of course, bless them, they are great human beings and they are so compassionate. But ultimately, I think you have to challenge the illness. The illness that is creeping in and is making you weak. You are the one who naturally could challenge that. And bless you, Gill. I think is not enough said, and we're approaching the end of this episode, and I can't wait for you to come back and tell us more and teach us and share with us, because your message is not about your message is not about you. Is about our listeners.
No.
Your message is not about the two of us talking and having great conversations. Is about the listeners who are dealing right now with silent illnesses, with disease, with signals, and maybe the lights are all over, they're all red, and they don't know how to deal with that, and they don't know what to do next. I'm so grateful for you being here, Gill. I can't tell you how much I believe in your mission to save 1 million lives this year. And I'm all in.
Good.
Over to you, Gill. Over to you.
Thank you. Well, you know, the next episode, when I come back again, you know, I want to really share with you how I've gone about helping and started the process of saving people's lives, and give you really some very easy ways that you can rescue yourself, take responsibility. I just see myself as an educator, you know, because there's so much noise out there. Should we be doing this? Should we be eating that? What is bad for you? What is good for you? And so many people find it very confusing to know how they can help themselves very simply by just creating perhaps 1 or 2 good habits a day. But those 1 or 2 habits could save your life. And those 1 or 2 habits could save the life of your nearest and dearest and your loved ones. And particularly, I'm going to be focusing on the biggest killer, heart disease. You know, heart disease worldwide kills more people than diabetes, respiratory disease, cancer, and accidents put together. But it's known as the silent disease as well. And so that's what we're going to be addressing. And I'm going to be telling you specifically about something called the miracle molecule. I can't wait to share it with you. Over to you, Marina.
Wow, Gill, I can't wait to reach out to our audience heart from the heart. Until next time, from both of us, is goodbye.
Goodbye.